My father called to uninvite me from my own sister's wedding, so I forwarded him the bill for the venue, the catering, and the flowers. I just made one phone call and reminded him that he had just insulted the owner of all of them. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The call came on a Tuesday, which was ironic. Tuesdays were my busiest day, the day I balanced the books for all three of my subsidiary companies, my children as I privately called them. I was running on 4 hours of sleep and a lukewarm coffee, staring at a spreadsheet so complex it looked like a cityscape of numbers. My company, Artisan Events, wasn't just a business. It was the empire I had built from nothing while my family watched from the sidelines, confused by my ambition. My phone buzzed, vibrating against a stack of invoices. I glanced at the screen, Dad. I smiled, a genuine, tired smile. It was probably another last-minute request for the wedding. My sister, Laura, was getting married in 3 weeks, and my father, Richard, had appointed himself the grand manager of the affair. "Hi, Dad, what's up? Does Laura need more peonies? I think I bought out the entire regional supply last week, but I can make a call," I said, my voice light. "Agatha," he said, his voice was flat. "Not Aggie, not my girl. Just Agatha." A cold pit opened in my stomach. I clicked the mouse, and the spreadsheet vanished, replaced by my desktop background, a photo of a serene lake. I needed the serenity. "Dad, you okay? Is Laura okay?" "Everyone is fine," he said, the words clipped. "Listen, I'm calling because, well, Connor and I were talking last night, and Laura agrees. We've been looking at the guest list." Connor, my sister's fiancé, a 29-year-old junior analyst who still used his father's credit card and whose only discernible skill was wearing expensive suits. I'd been footing the bill for his custom monogrammed cocktail napkins, but I stayed quiet. "Okay," I said slowly, tracing the rim of my coffee mug. "It's a bit late to be changing the guest list, Dad. The calligrapher sent the final proofs for the place cards yesterday. I just approved them." "Well, that's just it," Richard said. He sighed, a long-suffering sound he usually reserved for when his favorite golf course was closed for maintenance. "There's been a change. We need to reduce the numbers. Connor's parents are coming in and they're bringing some more important guests from his father's firm." The cold in my stomach turned to ice. "Important guests? Dad, what are you talking about? I'm your daughter." "And we know that, Agatha," he said, his voice taking on that oily, placating tone he used when he knew he was in the wrong. "But you have to understand, this is a very delicate social situation. Connor's family is, well, they're from a different world than ours. They're traditional, and your situation, it makes things complicated." "My situation?" I nearly laughed. "What situation? Owning a successful business, being single, what situation is so offensive, Dad?" "Don't be difficult," he snapped, his patience breaking. "You know what I mean, you're always working. You'll be on your phone the whole time, checking emails, taking calls. Connor feels, and we agree, that your focus will be seen as disrespectful. It's just not the right image for this kind of event, Agatha. It's high society. You just don't fit." I stared at the phone. My hand was shaking. I thought of the venue, the water's edge, which I had bought and restored myself, now the most exclusive spot in the state. I thought of the catering menus I had personally designed with the head chef of Savor, my culinary company. I thought of the floral arrangements from Bloom, my design studio, which I was arranging to have flown in from Holland. All of it a wedding gift. A massive, 6-figure wedding gift I was giving to my golden child sister, Laura, the 27-year-old lifestyle blogger who hadn't worked a real day in her life. "Dad," I whispered, the words sticking in my throat, "are you uninviting me from my own sister's wedding?" There was a long, terrible silence. I could hear the faint sound of a television in the background. He was probably in his leather recliner, the one I'd bought him for Christmas 2 years ago. "It's just for the best, Agatha," he finally said, his voice firming up, resolute. Laura is already so stressed, and this is her day. She doesn't need the added pressure of you making Connor's family uncomfortable. We'll have a nice family dinner later. Just us. It'll be better." The click of the phone ending was deafening. I sat there in the silence of my office for a full 10 minutes. The ice in my stomach had become a hard, heavy stone. I had been called diffic, disrespectful, and a complication by my own father. I, the one who had quietly paid off his mortgage when his investments went south. I, the one who was bankrolling this entire fantasy wedding. They thought I didn't fit. A slow, cold anger began to replace the shock. It started in my fingertips and moved up my arms, settling in my chest. It wasn't the hot, reckless anger of my youth. It was the calm, precise anger of a CEO who was about to liquidate a toxic asset. I picked up my phone. I didn't call my father back. I didn't call my sister. I called my operations manager. "Sarah," I said, my voice perfectly level, "pull up the Richard Laura wedding account, file L145. "Morning, Agatha. Sure, L145. Got it, the family discount account. What's up? Does your sister need more gold leaf on the cake?" "No," I said, swiveling in my chair to look out over the city. "She needs an update. Revert the account from internal at cost to full market rate, effective immediately, and send the fully itemized invoice to the client's email address. Yes, all three of them, my father, my sister, and Mr. Connors." Sarah was silent for a beat. She was the only one who knew the full extent of my family discount. She was the one who had helped me set up the internal ledger that billed my personal accounts for the venue, the food, the staff, the flowers. The invoices my father had been seeing were dummy reports, showing a 90% discount, courtesy of the owner's family. "Agatha," Sarah asked, her voice careful, "the full market invoice, that's over $200,000. "I'm aware," I said. "Send it. And one more thing, Sarah. Draft 3 emails, one from the manager of the Water's Edge, one from the head of Savor, and one from the lead designer at Bloom. The message is simple. As per the owner's directive, all services are suspended pending payment of the outstanding balance. All further communication will be routed through the owner's executive office. That's you, but I want them to know the owner has made the call." "Consider it done," Sarah said. There was a note of grim satisfaction in her voice. "Oh, and Sarah." "Yes." "Hold all my calls for the next hour. I'm going to get a coffee, a good one." I hung up, grabbed my purse, and walked out of my office. As I passed my assistant's desk, I said, "Mark my calendar. I'm taking a 3-week vacation, starting today." The betrayal was deep, but my power was absolute. The walk to the cafe downstairs was a blur. My building's lobby was all glass and gleaming steel, a monument to modernity, and I usually felt a surge of pride walking through it. Today, I felt like a ghost. I ordered a large Americano, black, and the barista, a young woman who knew my order by heart, gave me a concerned look. "Rough morning, Ms. Agatha." "You could say that, Maya," I murmured, taking the hot cup. My hands were still trembling, but not from shock anymore. It was adrenaline. I found a small table by the window and watched the city rush by, the people on the street all heading somewhere important. I, on the other hand, had just been told I wasn't important enough to attend my own sister's wedding. "You just don't fit." The words echoed in my head, mean and sharp. I had spent my entire life trying to fit, trying to be the good daughter, the successful one, to make up for my mother's absence after she passed. When my father's finances teetered on the brink of collapse after a few bad investments, it was I, at 28, who had just sold my first tech startup, who quietly funneled him the money to save the family home. He'd accepted it, of course, telling his golf buddies he'd had a market correction. And Laura, my baby sister, I'd paid for her university tuition, the one she dropped out of to find herself on a trip to Bali, which I also paid for. When she decided to become a lifestyle blogger, I'd bought her the high-end camera, the laptop, and paid for the web designer. Her entire career was built on the foundation of my hard work, a fact she conveniently forgot. And now, Connor, He'd entered the picture 6 months ago, all shiny teeth and empty compliments. He saw my family's old money aesthetic, the house I'd saved, the car I'd bought my father, and assumed we were like his family. He never once asked what I did. He just saw me, the older sister who was always in a business suit, as a social, a workaholic, a spinster in the making. He'd made subtle digs for months. "Don't you ever take a day off, Agatha? Laura and I are worried you're going to burn out. You should really try to meet someone." He wasn't worried. He was assessing a threat. He couldn't stand that I was more successful, more powerful, and completely self-made. He needed to remove me from the picture so he and Laura could be the new center of the family's universe. And my father, weak and obsessed with the image of success, had let him. My phone buzzed. It was Sa. "Ra, all assets deployed. The emails are out. The invoices sent. Good luck." I took a deep sip of my coffee. It was scalding hot, but it felt good. It anchored me. I sent a text back. "Thank you. Activate protocol firewall. All inquiries from Richard, Laura, or Connor go to your voicemail. I'll review them tonight." I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of a direct line to me. They wanted to cut me out. I'd show them what being cut out really meant. I finished my coffee and walked back to my office, the adrenaline now replaced with a cold, clear focus. My assistant looked up, startled. "Ms. Agatha, I thought you were taking the day." "Plans changed, Maria," I said, walking past her desk. "Clear my afternoon. I'm working on a new project. Code name, Family Restructuring." Back in my office, I allowed myself a small, grim smile. They had made a critical error. They thought I was just Agatha, the weird, work-obsessed sister. They had forgotten, or more likely, never bothered to learn, who I really was. They had forgotten who owned the table they so desperately wanted a seat at. My phone started to buzz again. A text from Laura. "WTF is this? A bill." Another from my father. "Call me. Now, this is not funny, Agatha." And another from a number I didn't recognize, but I knew was Connor. "Your little vendor friends are making a mistake. You need to call them and fix this." I silenced my phone and set it face down on the desk. They were panicking. Good. They thought this was a mistake. They thought this was a joke. They thought I was still the person they could push around. They had forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't just their family, I was their creditor. And the bill had just come due. To understand the depth of their panic, you have to understand the wedding they had planned. Or rather, the wedding I had planned, and they had simply pointed at. Laura was, and always had been, the golden child. Where I was quiet, studious, and pragmatic, Laura was bright, bubbly, and utterly incapable of delayed gratification. After our mother died, I was 16 and I stepped into the role of pseudo-parent, helping my father keep the house running. Laura, then 8, stepped into the role of permanent, grieving child, a role my father was all too happy to let her play. She was the pretty one, the social one. I was the responsible one. My father, Richard, adored her. He saw her as the living embodiment of the carefree life he always wanted. He hated my boring obsession with business, even as he cashed the checks. "All work and no play, Aggie," he'd say, ruffling my hair, even when I was 30. "You'll end up a rich old maid." Then Connor arrived. He was polished, from a family with a name, and he validated every one of my father's shallow aspirations. Connor didn't just see Laura, he saw the lifestyle he felt entitled to. And my father saw in Connor a chance to finally, truly, socially arrive. The wedding planning had started with a dinner at my father's house. "We want something simple, elegant," Laura had declared, scrolling through a Pinterest board that was anything but simple. "The best," Connor had clarified, swirling a glass of wine I'd brought. "Only the best for my Laura." My father had looked at me, a hopeful, expectant look in his eye. "Well, Aggie, you know people in that world. Surely you can get us a good deal on a venue." A good deal? I had just finalized the acquisition of the Water's Edge, a historic waterfront estate I'd spent 2 years and millions of dollars restoring. It was now the most sought-after wedding venue in the state, with a 3-year waiting list. "I might know a place," I'd said, forcing a smile. And so it began. I got them the water's edge on a last-minute cancellation. Then, when Laura tasted the food from Savor, my high-end catering company, nothing else would do. "Agatha, darling," she trilled, "their sea bass is divine. You must know the chef." "I know the owner," I'd replied dryly. Soon, I wasn't just in on the planning, I was the plan. My floral studio, Bloom, was tasked with creating an enchanted forest in a ballroom. My staff was running ragged, pulling off a miracle I was funding from my own pocket. I'd set up an internal account, L145, and quietly paid every invoice myself, sending my father falsified, family discount, receipts that showed a balance of pennies on the dollar. I was happy to do it, truly. I loved my sister and I wanted her to have a beautiful day. I wanted my father to be proud. I thought this grand gesture, would finally make them see me. How stupid I was. Connor was the one who sowed the seeds of my dismissal. He was the one who was truly suspicious, but not of the bills. He was suspicious of me. He'd see me at the venue tastings, quietly giving notes to the chef or pointing out a detail to the site manager. "Agatha, you seem very involved," he'd said one evening, his smile not reaching his eyes. He'd a possessive hand on Laura's shoulder. "I'm the head of Artisan Events," I'd replied simply. "This is one of our properties." His eyes had narrowed. "Artisan Events? I thought you owned a small event planning company." "Something like that," I'd said, not bothering to correct him. He hadn't liked that. He didn't like that the staff, from the valets to the general manager, greeted me with a deference he craved. "Ms. Agatha, a pleasure." "Ms. Agatha, can I get you anything?" He, Mr. Connor, was just another client. I was the boss. I saw him whispering to my father at the rehearsal dinner tasting. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the gestures. He'd point at me, then back at his own chest, then at Laura. He was positioning himself as the new man of the house, the protector, and I, the unmarried, workaholic older sister, was a loose thread, a social liability. "He's just worried, Aggie," my father had told me later, when I'd asked why Connor seemed so hostile. "His family is very prominent. He wants everything to be perfect. You know, image is very important to them." Image, that was the word. I wasn't the right image. In their gilded, shallow world, I was the reminder of the work it took to pay for it all. And Connor, with his polished veneer and empty promises, was the fantasy. They had chosen the fantasy, and in doing so, they had made me the enemy. They just didn't realize that the enemy was the one who owned the castle. My phone, which I'd left on my desk, buzzed so violently it skittered across the wood. A barrage of texts, voicemails, missed calls. The panic was setting in. For the rest of the afternoon, I let the storm rage outside my office. I had Maria route all calls, and my firewall protocol held. My father, sister, and Connor could scream into the void of Sarah's voicemail, but they couldn't reach me. This wasn't just a reflex, it was a strategy. I needed to shift from being Agatha, the hurt sister, to Agatha, the CEO. The first rule of a crisis is to control the flow of information. I had just cut off their supply line, and now I was going to watch them react. I had Sarah forward me the transcripts of the voicemails. They were, in a word, spectacular. Voicemail 1, Richard. "Agatha, what is the meaning of this? I've just received a bill for, this is absurd. $214,000. This is extortion. Your vendors are trying to ruin your sister's wedding. You call them right now and you fix this, you hear me? This is your family, call me back. Immediately." Voicemail 2, Laura, hysterical. "AGGIE, what did you do? The venue just canceled. And the caterer, they said they're suspending services. My wedding, you're ruining it. Connor is furious. He said he knew you were jealous. You're jealous of me. You call Dad back and you fix this. This is all your fault." Voicemail 3, Connor, cold and threatening. "Agatha, this is Connor. I don't know what kind of pathetic, childish game you're playing, but it's over. You have 5 minutes to call your father back and apologize to Laura, and you will reinstate these vendors. If you don't, I will have my lawyers on the phone with your little company. So fast your head will spin. You are making a very, very big mistake." I read the transcripts, a cold calm settling over me. They were following the script perfectly. Threats, guilt, accusations. Not a single one of them, not once, had stopped to ask, "Wait, why does Agatha have the power to do this?" They still didn't get it. They thought I was an employee. They thought I'd called my boss to get a discount. The concept that I was the boss, that the Water's Edge, Savor, and Bloom were all just divisions of my parent company, Artisan Events, was completely foreign to them. I had never boasted. I had just worked, and they had just assumed. This was no longer just about a wedding. It was about my father's casual dismissal, Laura's entitlement, and Connor's arrogant, manipulative behavior. He'd threatened me. He'd threatened my company. Fine, game on. I wasn't just a workaholic. I was a strategist, and my father and future brother-in-law had just given me all the ammunition I needed. My clever trap, the leverage I had, wasn't just the invoice. That was the opening shot. The real leverage was the information. While they had been ignoring me, I had been watching them. I pulled up the file I'd had my assistant prepare on Connor's family weeks ago. It was standard practice for any high-value client. I liked to know who I was dealing with. But my gut had told me to dig a little deeper on Connor. His father's prominent firm, it was real, but it was also being quietly investigated for financial irregularities. Connor's junior analyst position, it was a courtesy title. He had no real power and, according to a few discreet inquiries, no real prospects. He was a leech looking for a new host. He thought he'd found one. In Laura, assuming my family's quiet wealth was liquid and available. He'd seen me as a rival for that wealth, not the source of it. But there was something else. In that file was a note about a previous engagement, one that had been called off very suddenly. I picked up the phone and dialed a number. Not Sarah, this was a different kind of call. "Mark," I said when he picked up, "it's Agatha. I have a job for you. I need you to find someone for me." Mark was the best private investigator in the city. He owed me a favor after I discreetly handled the catering for his daughter's wedding. "I need everything you can find on a Connor last name. Specifically, I'm interested in a past engagement. A woman named, let's see, Jessica Miller. I want to know why it ended, and I need it by tomorrow morning." I hung up. The shift was complete. I was no longer a victim. I was in control. They thought they'd uninvited me. They were about to find out they had invited a war they couldn't possibly win. The next morning, my inbox contained a neatly compiled report from Mark. It was illuminating. Connor's previous engagement hadn't just been called off. It had imploded. He had done to Jessica's family exactly what he was trying to do to mine. He'd charmed them, inflated his own importance, and tried to leverage their connections and money for his own gain. When they'd started asking questions, he'd turned the daughter against them. The engagement ended when Jessica's father, a no-nonsense industrialist, threatened to have him arrested for fraud. But the real gem was this: Connor wasn't just a leech. He was a clumsy one. He had outstanding debts, gambling debts. The prominent family was desperately trying to keep a lid on it, but he owed a very large, very unfriendly sum to a bookie. This wedding wasn't just a status symbol for him. It was a lifeline. He was counting on the wedding gifts, the family connections, and, I suspected, the assumption that he could access my family's wealth, i.e., my wealth to pay off his sharks. This changed everything. It wasn't just snobbery, it was desperation. My phone rang. It was my father. I had let him stew for more than 12 hours. It was time to talk. I let it ring 3 times, then picked up. "Agatha's office," I said, my voice cool and professional. "Agatha, don't you Agatha's office me. What is going on?" My phone has been ringing all night. The venue manager, the caterer, they all said to talk to the owner. "I thought you knew the owner. I've been trying to call them." "You're speaking to her," I said calmly. "What? Don't be ridiculous. I need you to. What did you say?" I repeated, enunciating every word, "You're speaking to the owner. Artisan Events, the parent company, is mine. The Water's Edge, Savor, Bloom, They are all my companies. I own them, Dad. Every brick, every chef, every flower. There was a sound on the other end of the line. A sort of choked, gasping noise. That's not. You told me you had a small planning business. I never told you that, I said. I told you I was in events. You assumed it was small. You never asked. You were never interested. You were too busy telling me to find a husband. Silence, a thick, stunned silence. He had no defense, and he knew it. So this bill, his voice was a whisper now. That's the real, non-discounted price for the wedding you and Laura and Connor demanded. The family discount was me paying for it all out of my own pocket. It was my wedding gift to my sister. The sister whose wedding I am no longer invited to. Agatha, I didn't know, Connor said. He said you were just difficult. Connor, I said, and now my voice was ice. Let's talk about Connor. You uninvited me because he, a 29-year-old with a fake job, told you I was an image problem. You threw your own daughter out for a man you've known for 6 months. A man who, by the way, is being investigated, along with his family, for financial crimes. A man who has significant gambling debts he was clearly hoping to pay off with my money. That's a lie, he blustered, but there was no conviction in it. Connor is from a good family. He's a con artist, Dad, and you fell for it. He's not the first, either. His last engagement ended when his fiancée's father threatened to have him arrested. My father was breathing heavily into the phone. The image of the powerful patriarch was crumbling. I need to sit down, he mumbled. You do that, I said. Now, here's what happens next. You have 2 options. Option A, you, Laura, and Connor find $214,000 and pay the invoice by 5 o'clock today. If you do, my companies will honor their contracts. I, of course, will still not be attending. Agatha, we don't have that kind of money. He yelped, the panic returning. Which brings us to option B, I continued, steamroll. Ing over him? You cancel the wedding. You will, of course, forfeit the deposits I so generously paid on your behalf. But the outstanding balance will be cleared, and my companies and I will be out of your life for good. Cancel? We can't cancel. The invitations, the guests, what will we tell people? I don't know, Dad, I said, and I allowed the smallest, sharpest hint of my own pain to enter my voice. Maybe you can tell them the owner of the wedding didn't fit in with the image you were trying to project. I hung up the phone. The first confrontation was over. I had revealed my power, and I had revealed his weakness. But this was far from finished. The ball was in his court, but I owned the court, the ball, and the stadium. The fallout was immediate. My father, predictably, did nothing. He was a man paralyzed by indecision and a crumbling worldview. He couldn't pay, and he couldn't cancel. So he did what he always does. He passed the buck. He must have put me on speakerphone with Laura and Connor because my phone lit up with a new round of vitriol. This time, however, the tone was different. Laura's hysteria was gone, replaced by a sullen, wounded silence. The real noise came from Connor. Voicemail 4, Connor rage. You think you're so smart, you think you've won. You're a pathetic, jealous old maid, and you're trying to ruin your sister's happiness. You're lying about my family, you're lying about me, you'll be hearing from my lawyers. He was lashing out, but the threats were empty. He knew I had him. The lawyers were a bluff. A man who can't pay his bookie can't afford a high-priced litigator. But his desperation was the real threat now. He was a cornered animal. I knew he would try to regain control, and he would do it by manipulating Laura. I waited, I worked. I finalized the details of my vacation. A quiet villa in Tuscany. No phone, no email, just books and wine. The call I was actually waiting for came 2 days later. It wasn't from my family. It was from Mark, the pie. He's making moves, Mark said, his voice gravelly. Your future brother-in-law, he just tried to get a bridge loan from a private lender. Got denied. He tried to sell the watch his father gave him. Got laughed at. It's a high-end fake. A fake, of course it was. The entire man was a counterfeit. But that's not the interesting part, Mark continued. The bookie, The one he owes money to, his name is Vinny, and Vinny's associates paid a visit to Connor's apartment this morning. They were persuasive. Connor has 48 hours to come up with the cash, or they're going to start breaking more than just his china. The stakes had just escalated from social humiliation to physical danger. One more thing, Mark said. I found the ex-fiancée, Jessica Miller. She's eager to talk. Seems she's not a fan of Connor and would be very happy to see him get what he deserves. She's got emails, texts, all detailing his investment schemes. Mark, I said, you're a miracle worker. Put me in touch with her. No, better yet, ask her if she'd be willing to attend a family dinner. It was time for the second confrontation, but this one wouldn't be on the phone. This one would be in person. I called my father. He picked up on the first ring, his voice sounding small and old. Dad, I'm inviting you, Laura, and Connor to dinner. Tonight, at Savor. I don't think that's a good idea, Aggie. It's not a request. It's a final negotiation. You are to be at the restaurant's private dining room at 7 o'clock. If you are not there, I will assume you've chosen option A, and I will be forced to begin collections on the $200,000 debt you owe me. That means liens. That means lawyers. The kind you can't afford. You wouldn't, he whispered. Try me, I said and hung up. At 6:50 p.m., I was sitting in the private dining room of Savor. It was beautiful, all dark wood and soft lighting, with a single, stunning floral arrangement from Bloom on the table. At 7:00 p.m. on the dot, they walked in. My father looked haggard. Laura looked pale and puffy, her eyes red-rimmed. She wouldn't look at me. Connor, however, was a different story. He was still wearing his expensive suit, but it was rumpled. There was a frantic, wild energy in his eyes. He was a drowning man, and he was looking for someone to pull under with him. Agatha, my father began, his hands shaking. Sit, I said, motioning to the chairs. They sat. This is a joke, Agatha, Connor snarled. Bringing us here, to one of your places. What's next? You going to serve us a bill for the water? The water is complimentary, I said. But I'm glad you're focused on what's important. I gave you two options. You've chosen neither. So, I'm presenting a third. We're not canceling, Laura whispered her first words. Her eyes were fixed on the tablecloth. We can't, it's my day. Your day, I said, my voice soft, which made them lean in. Your day, Laura, which has been orchestrated by a man who is about to be arrested for fraud, and, if he's not careful, hospitalized for non-payment of his gambling debts. Connor shot to his feet. You're lying. You're trying to poison her against me. Am I said. I pulled a file from my briefcase and slid it across the table. That's a copy of the report from a private investigator. It details your $80,000 debt to a Mr. Vinny. It details the visit his associates paid you yesterday. It also details the high-end and very fake watch you tried to sell. Connor's face went white. My father gasped. And as for poisoning Laura, I continued, I don't have to. You've done a wonderful job of that yourself. But just in case she's still under your spell. I nodded to the door. I invited one more guest. The door opened, and a woman I'd never met but whose face I'd seen in photos walked in. She was elegant, sharp, and looked furious. Connor, she said, her voice dripping with acid, you look terrible. Connor collapsed back into his chair, as if his legs had been cut out from under him. Laura, I said, I'd like you to meet Jessica Miller, Connor's ex-fiancée. She has some stories you might be interested in. About, for instance, the investment he tried to get her father to make, and the family emergency that required her to lend him her grandmother's engagement ring, which, it turned out, he pawned. Laura's head snapped up. She looked from Jessica to me to Connor. The spell wasn't just broken, it was shattered. The silence in the room was absolute. It was a heavy, suffocating thing, broken only when Laura let out a small, shuddering breath. She was staring at Connor, her golden child glow gone, replaced by a dawning, horrified understanding. Connor, she whispered, who is she? What is she talking about? Connor just sat there, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. He was trapped. Jessica didn't wait for him to answer. She stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Connor. "I'm the one who got away," she said, her voice ringing with clarity. "I'm the one whose family he tried to bleed dry before he moved on to yours. The investment? The family connections? It's all a script, honey. And you, my dear," she said, her gaze softening as she looked at Laura, "are the star of his latest, and apparently most desperate, show." Jessica pulled a phone from her purse. "He told me he loved me. He told me my family was stifling me and that we should build our own future. He meant build his future with my father's money. Xian, here, this is the text where he asks me to loan him $50,000 to cover a stock market loss. My dad's a stockbroker. He knew in 5 minutes it was a lie." Laura flinched as if struck. He said he needed money for the wedding deposits." "The deposits I already paid," I interjected calmly. "So where did that money go, Connor? Was it for Mr. Vinny, or just a down payment on a new fake watch?" "You," Connor suddenly roared, surging to his feet. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "This is all you witch, you were jealous. You couldn't stand to see your sister happy, so you dug up all this filth." "I'm not the one with an $80,000 gambling debt, Connor," I said, not flinching. "I'm not the one who was uninvited from my own sister's wedding. I'm not the one who built a life on lies." "Dad," Laura wailed, finally turning to Richard. "Dad, do something." My father looked broken. He looked at me, at the sister I'd defended. He looked at Laura, the daughter he'd coddled. And he looked at Connor, the man who represented the social status he'd so craved. The man who was now revealed as a fraud. "Richard," I said, my voice firm, "this ends. Now, your choice. You can side with him," I gestured to Connor, "and I will see you all in court. And I will win. Or you can stand up for the first time in your life and protect your daughter." All the air went out of Connor. He saw it was over. His face, which had been contorted in rage, suddenly crumpled into a pathetic, desperate plea. "Laura, baby, don't listen to her. She's twisting things. We love each other. We can elope, we don't need them." He reached for her hand. It was that move, that last, desperate, possessive grab, that finally did it. Laura, who had been frozen in tears, snatched her hand away. "Don't touch me," she spat, her voice low and dangerous. She stood up, her whole body shaking, but not with tears anymore. It was rage. A pure, undiluted rage I had never seen in her. She looked at Connor, really looked at him, as if seeing him for the first time. The charming fiancé, the handsome analyst, the man of her dreams. And all she saw was a cheap, hollow fake. Then she did something that surprised us all. She picked up her glass of water, the complimentary one, and with a steady hand, she calmly, deliberately, and systematically poured the entire thing over Connor's head. The water soaked his expensive hair, dripped down his prominent face, and puddled in the lap of his designer suit. He sat there, sputtering, dripping, and utterly, completely defeated. "You're pathetic," Laura whispered. She then turned to my father. "And you let this happen, you chose him over her." She pointed at me. Then she looked at me, and for the first time I didn't see the golden child. I just saw my little sister. "Agatha," she said, her voice cracking, "I'm so sorry." "Security," I said, speaking into a small intercom on the wall. The door opened immediately, and 2 of my site managers, large, imposing men, stepped in. "Connor," I said, "this is where you leave. These gentlemen will escort you out. I'd suggest you find a way to pay Mr. Vinny, because my family discount doesn't extend to bookies." Connor, dripping and humiliated, didn't say a word. He just let them lead him out of the room. The dinner, I decided, was over. The aftermath was quiet and profoundly awkward. After Connor was removed, Jessica gave me a small, approving nod. "Well," she said, "that was more satisfying than I'd imagined. Good luck, you too." And she left, a woman who had successfully closed a very bad chapter of her life. That left me, my father, and my sister in the silent, private dining room. Laura was the first to move. She slowly walked over to my side of the table. Aggie, she whispered, the childhood nickname sounding foreign and rusty. I don't know what to say. He told me you were jealous. He said you were trying to control everything to make my wedding about you. And Dad agreed with him. My father flinched, staring at his hands. Laura, I just wanted you to be happy. I thought he was. You thought he was rich, I said, the words hanging in the air, cold and true. You thought he was a social upgrade. You were willing to trade your daughter for a better invitation to the golf club. Agatha, no, he protested, but the denial was weak. Yes, I said. You've spent the last 20 years disappointed that I was a workhorse and not a show pony. And you've spent the last 20 years turning Laura into a show pony, one who didn't know how to do anything but look pretty. Look what it got you. Look what it got her. Laura was crying silently now, not the hysterical sobs of before, but deep, painful tears of shame. I sighed. The anger was gone, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. The wedding, I said, is obviously canceled. My companies will absorb the cost. Consider it a severance package from the family. Agatha, wait, Laura said, grabbing my arm. Please, I'm sorry, I was stupid. I was so stupid. But please, don't leave, not again. I looked at her, really looked at her. The entitled blogger was gone. In her place was a scared, 27-year-old woman who had just realized her entire life was a fantasy. I'm not leaving, I said, my voice softening. But I'm not. I can't be that person anymore. I'm not the family bank. I'm not the fixer. And I am done being the person you call when you need something, only to hide me in a closet when your important friends come over. I turned to my father. And we have a lot to talk about, starting with the mortgage on your house, the one I paid off. His head snapped up, his eyes wide with a new, different panic. Laura's jaw dropped. What? Laura whispered. Oh, yes, I said. Dad's market correction in 2008? That was me. This entire life, the house, the club, the comfort, has been subsidized by the workaholic daughter you were so embarrassed by. We're going to be setting up a formal repayment plan. Not because I need the money, but because you need to understand, finally, what things actually cost. My father, Richard, the man who had uninvited me, just nodded, his face pale. He was, for the first time, utterly defeated by the truth. The next few months were a restructuring. Laura, to her credit, stepped up. She got a job, a real one, as an assistant at a PR firm. She was terrible at it at first, but she stayed. She moved out of my father's house and into a tiny apartment with 2 roommates. She sold all the designer clothes Connor had bought her on credit, it turned out, and started over. My father and I entered therapy. It was brutal. He had to confront decades of his own inadequacy and his deep-seated, old-fashioned beliefs about women, work, and family. We're not good, but we're better. He started taking responsibility for his own finances. As for Connor, his downfall was swift. Without the wedding, without my family, he had no resources. Mr. Vinny's associates were not as forgiving as I was. I heard he lost his job, his apartment, and his car. His prominent family, facing their own legal troubles, cut him loose. He was last seen working at a rental car kiosk. I did take that vacation to Tuscany. I stayed for a month. I turned off my phone, I read books, I drank wine, and I remembered who I was without the weight of my family's expectations. When I came back, Laura asked me to lunch. She paid, with her own hard-earned money. It was just a sandwich at a corner cafe, but it was the best meal we'd ever shared.